Okay, now I want to give you the second video on Chapter 2 on form. And in this one, I'm going to go through the second and third level of those three levels for form. So in the first level, you have nouns and verbs. And those two parts of speech essentially walk together. Those things are brother and sister. They are almost always tied together. They were essential to all thought, to all speech, and to all writing. Those are the core two primary parts of speech. Without those two parts of speech, nothing else is possible. Okay, you can essentially communicate at a very rudimentary level with nouns and verbs. You can't do that really with adjectives and adverbs, prepositions and conjunctions, especially with prepositions and conjunctions, since those are meaningless. But so very important to know that the nouns and verbs set up everything else. Those are the foundation of everything else. If you got those down, you're in good shape. Those are going to be the most essential words for setting up clauses. Okay. Now, as we go to the other parts of speech, you're going to see these things are built around those two parts of speech. Everything else that follows is built around those. Okay. Let's go to adjectives and adverbs. Now, adjectives and adverbs, what they do is they add detail to nouns and verbs. That's their function. They can't exist without nouns and verbs. Nouns and verbs can exist without adjectives and adverbs. They can. Adjectives and adverbs cannot exist without nouns and verbs. Okay? And so it's very important to understand these are built on top of the nouns and verbs. And that's the whole reason for being there. Okay? So they provide detail. They flesh things out and they give precision. So you can use the language at a very rudimentary level and get away with avoiding adjectives and adverbs. You can. But you're going to sound and write like a first grader. Okay? So it's very important to keep in mind. They are non-essential grammatically. You can speak, you can think, speak, and write without them. But again, you're not going to do very well. These things add the precision. So what adjectives do, and again, I do realize that many people get adjectives and adverbs mixed up. And there's no reason to. They're not that complicated. Adjectives modify nouns, okay? And that's what they do. They can come in the form of a word, or, very important, they can come in the form of a phrase. They can come in the form of a clause, but we're not going to get into that right now, okay? And I do get into that issue with nouns and verbs also. You can have noun phrases, blue house, frightened cat. Those are all noun phrases. With adjectives, you can have what are called prepositional phrases that function as adjectives. Okay, with the green hair can be describing a fan at the Philadelphia game. That can do it. With the green hair is a description of the Philadelphia fan. That's what it is. It's an adjective. That whole phrase, that prepositional phrase, is an adjective. Okay, so you can have it single word. The green, green can be an adjective modifying a noun, or it can be a prepositional phrase with the green hair that comes after the noun. So adjectives, it's very important to keep in mind, they are tied onto their noun. They are, if they're a single word, they will be sitting in front of their noun and they cannot move. They can't go anywhere else. Okay? If I say the green house, green must come before that house. If I put it somewhere else in the sentence, then I just turn something else green, and that house is now some other color. Okay, so that word, green, if I'm talking about the house, it's got to be placed in front of the house. It's got to be. Okay, if it's a prepositional phrase, such as with the green paint, that must come right after the noun house, immediately after. It cannot come later in the sentence. And you're probably sitting there thinking, well, duh, why does that matter? Well, it's going to matter when we get to adverbs, okay? So if I say the house and I want to describe the one with the green paint, I've got to say the house with the green paint. With the green paint is a prepositional phrase that is describing the house. So adjectives are not just single words. They can be whole phrases. They can even be whole clauses. They can. Relative clauses are essentially an adjective, okay? But we'll come to those later on, okay? So a clause can be an adjective too. So a word can be an adjective, and that's usually how most of you guys have been taught about adjectives. But whole phrases, prepositional phrases, can be adjectives. If I talk about the president and I say the president of the college is describing the president. It's an adjective. I could also say the college president. College is modifying the president. If it's a single word, it must come in front. If it's a prepositional phrase, it must come right after. And it must come either in front of president or right after president. It cannot move around, okay? That's how adjectives work. They are always tied directly onto the noun that they are modifying. You can take them out of a sentence, and the sentence will work just fine. It'll just be less precise and less detailed. That's what it is, okay? So that idea that prepositional phrases create adjectives is extremely important. I can't overemphasize this. It is the primary characteristic of my A and B writers over the years, okay? The ability to use prepositional phrases to add detail to writing. I cannot overemphasize how important it is, and how important it is, especially in the middle and later draft stages, to develop your writing. You really need to be able to use prepositional phrases to flesh out and provide precision into your writing. And I will come back to that more. Okay? Throughout these videos, I'll come back to it again and again and again. So adverbs modify verbs. Now, when you learned about adverbs back in elementary school, junior high, and high school, you also learned that they can modify other adjectives and that they can modify other adverbs, that they've got all these functions. My old Latin teacher used to call them the third drawer of your dresser. You put all these things in there. It's just everything else flies into the third drawer. You have letters from old girlfriends or boyfriends, whatever the case may be, and you have socks that your dog chewed on. You have everything under there. That's kind of how the adverbs have been taught, but you know what? For our purpose, in almost all cases, all you need to know is that adverbs modify verbs. You should not be using them very often to modify other adjectives or other adverbs. It's probably, when you do that, it's probably bad writing. Words like very or really. It's really cold outside. You don't need that in your writing. We use it in our speech. So for now, just understand, let me simplify it for you a little bit. Adverbs modify verbs, and it makes it easier to remember that way. So adverbs go a little bit crazy because they can modify other things. But all I want you to do, because all you're probably going to be doing in your writing, is modifying verbs with adverbs. Okay? Now, the first way to recognize them, if it's a single word, is to notice that it has an ly ending on it. The vast majority, probably about 80% of adverbs, have an ly ending on them. Quickly, sadly, all those kind of delightfully. These are all ly words. They are almost always adverbs. There are some exceptions, like lovely. If I say it's a lovely house, that's an adjective modifying a noun, but that doesn't happen too often. If you just remember words that end in ly are going to be adverbs, that's going to get you an A-, and you're going to do fine. Okay? That's when it's words. The only significant exceptions are what I'm calling the dirty half dozen. Those are ever, never, not, always, already, often. Those do not end in ly, and these are used very often. There are a few others, okay? There are a few others, but if you just get this dirty half dozen down, ever, never, not, always, already, often, along with the ly, you're going to be able to identify almost every single word, adverb, that you're going to come across, okay? Now, the other thing to know is that prepositional phrases can be adverbs. If I say we went to the store on Saturday tells you when we went. That's modifying the verb went. That whole phrase is functioning as an adverb, okay? It's modifying the verb to tell you when it happened, okay? So that's what prepositional phrases can do. Prepositional phrases, these are the 2 to 4 word little phrases. They can act as adjectives or they can act as adverbs. That's what they can do. They're always that. They can never do anything else. They can either be adjectives modifying a noun, or they're going to be adverbs modifying a verb. And it's still an adverb. Okay. Now, the one odd thing about adverbs is they can often be used in different parts of the sentence. They can often, not always, but they are often able to move around the sentence. It's kind of weird. You can bounce them around. Okay. Let me go through some of the exercises in the book to get the idea of adjectives and adverbs down. Okay. And you can see it here. This is beautiful houses. Beautiful is modifying houses. You knew this. Thoughtful card. Beefy vegetables. Yeah, it's kind of weird, but yeah, you can call them that. A squeaking door. This, by the way, is an gerundive. If it's coming in front of a noun and it's modifying that noun, just call it an adverb. That's all it is. Okay. These, our, 12, my, those are all what are called determiners. They're a type of adjective. Okay. Just if they're coming right in front of a noun and they're describing it, treat it as an adjective. Okay. It's fine. You don't need to know these things. You don't need to know that to write well. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. Just know that this is modifying the number of steps. Our, it's a possessive modifying the coffee. It's our coffee, not his coffee. So, and all that. So, and a, and the are what are called articles, which are this type of, don't worry about them. Okay? These don't create problems. But determiners are types of adjectives. And this, most folks do all right with this one. Crazy is modifying party. Okay. No is actually modifying students. Freezing is modifying rain. Okay. Thurston Al III delivered the beautiful is modifying flowers. Dear is modifying wife. Okay. You can say his dear wife is, his dear is modifying wife. That's fine. My gray is modifying slacks. Red is modifying shirt. Okay. So most students do fine with this. They have a little bit of trouble with the determiners, but it's usually not a serious problem. When they are single words, they always come in front of their noun. When they are phrases, prepositional phrases, they will come afterward. Okay. Now, adverbs are different. I'm just going to take them as modifying, and they really just modify action verbs. That's all they really do. There is more to adverbs. There's more to it. It's not worth learning about. Okay. There are little exceptions to what I've talked about. They just don't come up often enough for you to worry about them to write well. If you get caught up in the details, it's going to hurt your writing more than help. Just keep in mind that they help you modify the action verb. That's what they do. And they end with the ly. Okay. When I wrote about this one, then helping verbs, just understand they can jump in the middle between a helping verb and its main verb. They can do this. And it's especially the dirty half doesn't do it, but the other ones can do it too. Already jumped in the middle of was barking. Was barking is your full verb. Already is the adverb that jumped in the middle. I often say that adverbs are like your little brother. They can bounce around the sentence. They can do that. And notice what happened here. The dog was barking at the neighbor's horse already. I could do that. I can move it to the end, or I can move it to the middle of the verb. It's kind of like a little brother. It's always bouncing around, getting in the way. It can jump right in the middle. You're sitting on the couch with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, and your little brother sits down right in the middle and says, "What's your name?" That's a stupid name, and does things like that. That's what adverbs do. They're kind of the pain in the butt part of speech, and they can jump around the sentence. They can. They don't always do that. They don't always do that. There are exceptions to it. But if it jumps around, it's not an adjective. It's an adverb. So already can jump. It's an adverb. So quickly can jump. The horses were quickly running down the hillside with the cowboys in their saddles. The horses were running down the hillside quickly with the cowboys in their saddle. Notice it's an ly word and it moves. Okay. So it moves. That's fine. We're running quickly. We're running, the hillside quickly with the cowboys. It can move around the sentence. That tells you it's a little brother getting in the way. Okay. So identifying them is usually pretty easy. Look for the ly or the dirty half dozen. And then you can see that you can move it around. We decided unanimously to go to the beach instead of to class. Unanimously, we decided to go to the beach instead of to class. We decided to go to the beach instead of to class unanimously. So I can move it around, and you just put it wherever it sounds best. I don't like it at the end. That my shit detector says don't do that. It likes it right here. So fortunately, the dog was able to find the lost child in the forest. The dog was able to fortunately find the lost child in the forest. Okay, the dog was fortunately. I can move it around the sentence. You get the idea. Oh look, there's the ly. Okay, here's the ly. So already is one of the dirty half dozen. Shamelessly is an ly. So carefully. So those should work for you. Okay. Early is a little bit tricky. This one is, students get confused on this. Early is an ly word, so it is an adverb. In this one, in 9, it's Tuesday. That's an exception. Okay. The day of a week can be a noun or it can be an adverb. So in this case, Tuesday is actually an adverb telling you when you will go. So that's the one tricky one. But in this one, just asks you to rewrite these sentences, moving the adverb around. Lately is the adverb, move it around and rewrite the sentence. Jamie has been talking to Adelina lately, and it makes sense. Where should it go? Wherever it sounds best to you. You get to decide, okay? So that's how adjectives and adverbs work, okay? And they can be either single words or whole prepositional phrases, okay? So now with prepositions and conjunctions. Now remember, with prepositions and conjunctions, these are essentially the meaningless words, okay? They add, let me go to this, the prepositions and conjunctions, let me get out of the way. They don't have much meaning of their own. What they do is they set up relationships. That's what they do, okay? So let me go through the two functions of them. Prepositions come at the beginning of prepositional phrases. That's what they do. In an hour, on the fence, with my friends, until the morning, you know, over and over and over again. I give you a long list of prepositions in the book, and you guys know these words. None of these are fancy, and most of them don't really mean much. Their definitions, again, are pretty tough to do. But what they do is they start off a new prepositional phrase. That's what they do. That's why they're important, okay? So what they do in the end is they link up a noun to another noun or a verb. Notice that's essentially what conjunctions do. They link things together, okay? But they take a noun. A prepositional phrase starts with a preposition, ends with a noun. Prepositional phrases are anywhere from 2 words to 3, 4, 5. They could be 20 words, literally they could. But in most cases, they're 2 to 4 words. That's what they are. To George's, okay? To my friend George's house. You know, that's a prepositional phrase. To my friend George's house. 5 words. That's a prepositional phrase. So 2 to 4, possibly 5. They're just these short little chunks of language that function together. But it starts with a preposition, ends with a noun. That's what it does. And that's your prepositional phrase. And that prepositional phrase is going to link that noun up that comes at the end. It's going to link it up to another noun, or it's going to link it up to the verb. That's what it's going to do. And in the end, that prepositional phrase, the whole phrase, will become either an adjective or an adverb. That's what it's going to do. It allows you to take a noun and relate it to another noun or relate it to a verb. That's what it does. Okay? So what they mean isn't important. What they do is, and I want to really emphasize, prepositional phrases are one of the 3 most important characteristics of good writers. I spent a good deal of time going through the writing of my best students, and the number one thing they do, by far, is they use more prepositional phrases than the C and D students. That is the screaming difference between the A and B students and the C and D students. They add more detail to their writing. That's what they do. They're more precise. They're not using big fancy words. They're using prepositional phrases to give more detail about the nouns and verbs that they are using. Okay? So doing that in your middle draft stages is going to make a huge difference. Now, the next part of speech are conjunctions. Conjunctions, set up relationships between words, phrases, and clauses. So they take other words and they connect them onto other words. Dog and cat, that takes two nouns together. Green and yellow fire hydrant. It takes two adjectives and hooks them together so you can put them in front of your fire hydrant. Okay, and that's what they do. They put two things together. So, but it can also link two phrases together. I went with my cousin and my best friends to the store. With my cousins and with my best friends, those are two prepositional phrases being linked together by the end. Okay, we can, and I could have two verb phrases like, was walking and was talking. Susie was walking and was talking to Jeremy. So I can link the two verb phrases together. Or you can link two clauses. Jeremy was listening to his iPod and Susie was texting her best friend. I'm linking those two clauses together. Okay, most of you know how to do that, but I'm going to show you a way to create parallels in your writing that will make your writing even better. We're going to do that in Chapter 4. So those are coordinating conjunctions. The last type of conjunction I want you to be aware of, and we're going to come back to this in Chapter 4. We're going to come back to this in Chapter 4. Okay, very essential. We're going to use what are called subordinating conjunctions. When, since, if, before, until, as, all these words, and they're not very meaningful, but they set up what are called dependent clauses, and you get to create complex sentences with them. Okay, so being able to create parallels with coordinating conjunctions and being able to create complex sentences with subordinating conjunctions are the two other characteristics of my A and B students. Okay, so really the last two parts of speech, if you really get down how to use them, you're going to be able to write like the best students in the classes. The best students in my classes use plenty of prepositional phrases. They write in parallels using coordinating conjunctions, and they can write using dependent clauses. When you use a dependent clause, you create a complex sentence. If you can do those three things, prepositional phrases, parallels, and dependent clauses to create complex sentences, you will write like the A and B students. Okay, but notice when you start doing that, you are going to have very detailed and precise writing. Those grammatical structures of prepositional phrases, coordinating conjunctions, and subordinating conjunctions allow you to create more adjectives and adverbs for your writing. They allow you to create parallels in your writing so you can multiply your verbs, okay, which is absolutely essential. And they allow you to create dependent clauses in complex sentences, which create more sophisticated understandings. Okay, those three things are the characteristics of A and B writers. Okay, and they end up forcing you to be really more detailed. They really do a great job of it. Now, just going through prepositions here kind of quickly. This is the list of prepositions. An absolutely boring but absolutely essential drill, and notice I say drill, 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 is the prepositional phrase drill. This one is going through and learning prepositions and crossing out the prepositions. First, I'll have you cross out prepositions and just cross out on and to and of and to, and just cross these out. Okay. Notice that when you do that, it screws up the whole sentence. In and until, for and for. But let me show you a funky thing about this. The sentence cannot stand with on crossed out and to crossed out. It won't make any sense. Saturdays, Domingo usually takes his sister the movies. Your shit detector should go off. And if I take out of and to, a number of countries agreed the sanctions. Your shit detector is going off. What if I took out in and until? The economic situation, Europe was looking good last year. It's just like, what? I can make sense out of it because I didn't take any meaning out, but it just sounds funky. But watch this. If I take out the whole prepositional phrases, the sentence still makes sense. Domingo usually takes his sister. If you already know we're talking about Saturdays in the movies, and I just told you, yeah, Domingo usually takes his sister. Notice it makes sense. And if you already know we're talking about countries and we're talking about sanctions, if I said a number agreed, now you know what I'm talking about. Notice the sentence can survive without a prepositional phrase. And if I talk out in Europe and until last year, the economic situation was looking good. Taking medications can be complicated. Notice when I take out prepositional phrases, the sentence makes sense. Prepositional phrases are non-essential, but absolutely necessary for writing well. They're non-essential grammatically. In other words, the sentence can survive without them and be grammatically correct. But if you want to write in a detailed manner, and that's what good writers do, you need them in order to accomplish that. Okay? So that's what they do. That's how prepositions and prepositional phrases work. Okay? And then we go through conjunctions. You know and, but, and or. I'll tell you right now, yet, so, and nor aren't nearly as important. If you just learn and, but, and or, I'm good with it. Okay? And if you learn fanboys, forget about it. Just and, but, and or, and you're good. Okay? Most students don't have a hard time with those. They have a little bit of a hard time with these subordinating conjunctions. And these are conjunctions. After, although, even though, until, when, at, wherever, where, so that, when is a big one, if is a big one. These are called subordinating conjunctions. These create dependent clauses. Okay? Like prepositions, they change what comes after them, but they change the clause that comes after them, not just the phrase. Piranhas kept attacking. That could be a sentence. Until the prey is completely eaten, that has a subject and verb, but it cannot be a sentence. It's a dependent clause. It can come at the end or the front. Until the prey is completely eaten, the piranhas keep attacking. Notice that funky thing. Dependent clauses can go to the front or to the back. The whole thing. Not pieces of it, but the whole darn thing. That's a dependent clause. Okay? So finish up chapter 2, and then I'll be posting the quiz, and if you can finish that in a couple days, you'll be in good shape. All right? Good luck with this, guys. Keep at it, and the system will make sense once we get to chapter 3. Okay? Take care.